I get that question a lot, like, will I be famous? Like, is this relationship going to work? And it's wonderful to talk these things through. And what I love about astrology is it actually has a predictive element to it, which defines where your energy is driven, where you want to be in life, what you're here to experience, what this incarnation was intended to help you work through. All that said, you just don't know. There's a million variables that play into it, and a lot of them are well beyond your control. And at times, it's even counterproductive to think about them because you don't have not even that they're beyond your control, but you have no insight into the variables that are playing into it. You don't know the influences of the cosmos. You don't know the influences of the higher consciousness. You don't know the intention for the other person involved. And so when we sit there and we think like, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, there's nothing wrong with going to a respectable clairvoyant or going to a respectable astrologer or having a cup of tea with a really old wise man in a nursing home who's been through something similar, who can bring you some insight and wisdom. Those are all really calming and wonderful experiences. But at the end of the day, the message that I tell people a million times over is that if you're meant to be famous, you'll be famous. If you're meant to get married to that person, you'll get married to them. Right? If you're meant to be a mother of two kids, a boy and a girl, just the way you always hoped, then that will happen. It doesn't mean that you're complicit and you just sit and wait for it to happen. It means you do what you can. But you have to recognize that so much of what happens in life is beyond your control. And the thing that you can do best to put yourself in the perfect position or the ideal position to achieve what it is that you seek is govern your behavior with an absolute prioritization on honesty and healthy communication. And those are just cliche but basic tenets, and people are like, well, what does that mean? I say, go as honest as you possibly can. So it's easy in the simplistic state. You don't want to lie to a friend. You're not okay being deceptive online, even if it's trite. You just want to try to live as truthful and as honestly as possible. But you also have to go into a deep state of ownership. And so, for example, I went into a state of radical honesty. This is when my career was winding down, and I used to be late to meetings. There was some resistance that I had at times to going to these meetings, and I would show up and not terribly late, 5 or 10 minutes here or there, but it was enough that people would be anxious, they'd be waiting for me. There was one meeting, and I used to always say, oh, the trains were behind, or the traffic was brutal, or sorry, everybody, the dog ate my homework, whatever it was a bullshit excuse. And then one day, I read a piece on radical honesty and ownership, and I said, that's it. That's it, that's it, that's it. If I'm late, it's because I'm late. There are no more excuses. If I choose a dishonest moment, I'm responsible for it. And I remember I was going to like the largest hedge fund in the world in Connecticut, and I knew in how much time it normally took to drive from the city, and I just cut it really close, and sure enough, there was a traffic jam and an accident, and it backed me up 20 minutes. And I got there, and people were waiting for me, and they said, oh, like, why are you late? And I said, I didn't leave enough time. Like, I should have anticipated the likelihood of some traffic problems, because there usually were. I dilly-dallied reading the newspaper and eating berries at the morning buffet. I could have easily left earlier, and I didn't. I'm responsible. And in that moment, it was, I'm sorry, everybody, I'm late. It's my fault. That to me is where my honesty started to go. It was full and complete ownership and accountability for my behavior and the implications and repercussions of how they affected other people. And if you govern your life with that type of energy, where you're radically honest with yourself and the people around you, living in a deep state of ownership and acceptance for all that you do, and combine that with open, healthy communication, even if it's hard to be communicative, even if it's really challenging to look somebody in the eye and say, I screwed up. But if you can do that, everything else that you worry about, will I get married, will I have kids, will I get the promotion, all that stuff will be exactly as it should be. And you can rest easily at night knowing that you're putting your best foot forward. You don't have to beat yourself up anymore saying, do I deserve it, did I get it, will I get it. You won't live with regret. But if you approach life with a ton of dishonesty, non-communication, or you lack acceptance for your faults, and you're constantly in denial of your accountability when something goes wrong. If things don't go the way you want them to, you only have yourself to blame.